All right, YouTube, it's time for Trump Omnibus Day 2 because there are more things happening. Last night, of course, he tweeted out that he was going to send the feds to Chicago if they don't get their crime rate under control. Almost immediately, the salons of the web reported, oh, Trump threatens martial law, takeover of Blue City or something like that. That's not what he's calling for. He's calling for sending federal agents there. It's within his purview to do that. He's not talking about the military or the National Guard. That would be martial law, and by the way, would be unconstitutional under most situations, and should be unconstitutional under all situations, honestly. Sending the feds there to try to curb the crime rate by ameliorating damage done specifically by gangs. It's not like many of these gang members, they're not known. They are. My own feelings about this are there are easier ways to really stop the crime epidemic in our inner cities. Part of that's the drug war, and it looks like Trump may front the DEA with a man who is for recreational marijuana legalization. So if he does that, all bets are off as far as his popularity. If he goes hard left on the drug war, and I have some reason to believe that's possible that it will happen, we're going to save so much money and so much time policing nonviolent crimes that it's perfectly feasible to crack down on actual gang violence in the inner cities. You don't need the feds there. The gang money will begin to dry up anyway because you've removed their most important black market. And these gangs would not be as large or powerful as they are if it weren't for cooperation with cartels that goes into the border wall, which I'll talk about briefly as well. And so you could solve a large number of these problems simply by ending the drug war policies that we're under. Not just marijuana. I would decriminalize. I would legalize marijuana. I wouldn't bother, by the way, to tax it. If I were in charge, if I was empowered to do so, my policy would be marijuana, yeah, you can smoke it if you want to. You can possess it if you want to. If you're growing fewer than maybe, let's say, 10 plants or something, I don't give a fuck. If you want to grow more than that, it'd be a simple permitting process and basic oversight, and that's about all. Beyond that, I wouldn't do anything. As far as other substances, I wouldn't encourage their manufacture and so forth. I mean, if you want to grow like mushrooms under your bed or something, I wouldn't care about that either, honestly. I'd decriminalize that. As far as small-scale production of like some of the psychedelics. Otherwise, for possession use, I'd decriminalize it. It'd be like a slap on the wrist fine. For harder drugs, it'd be mandatory rehab. But I wouldn't throw people in jail for possessing any substance under the sun. Now, what you would see if that happens, crime rate would plummet because the most important black market of virtually every gang in the country would dry up overnight. You'd save a hell of a lot of money on policing. Police could, respond to actual violent crime, leave simple drug users alone. DUI would continue to be enforced, so would public intoxication, and disorderly conduct, and so forth. Disturbing the peace. Oh, this dude high on mushrooms is wandering down the street rambling about dwarves attacking him. Yeah, that might be disturbing the peace. Okay, I can understand that. As far as simple possession, you're in your home, you want to take like LSD, who gives a fuck? Doesn't affect you, doesn't affect me, it only affects the person taking it. If they're doing it around little kids, that'd be a different issue. It'd be, child abuse potentially. Other than that, I don't give a fuck. He could really go great distances towards getting the centrists on board so they wouldn't think that he was a fascist. If he makes even a half-assed overture at ending the drug war, we're talking just federally medical marijuana would go a great distance. Recreational marijuana in a regulated form, which I'm not on board with. I don't think it should be regulated at all for the most part for simple possession or small-time growing. That would go a distance. It would prove to people that their conception of Trump as sort of this extreme hardline moralist is wrong. And I don't believe he's a hardline moralist. I look at the Mexico City policy, I say that has to do with giving money to foreign nations. It has nothing to do with our domestic policy on whether we're a pro-choice or an anti-choice nation. I'm pro-choice completely. I've debated this with actual moralists before. Oh, how can you say that you're for killing babies? Well, we can have that debate for 1,000 years. It's been raging for decades. I'll make another video. I've made a video on the topic. I'll make another one in the future. So that's what I think about the Chicago stuff. Yeah, sending in the feds is fine, but there are easier ways to solve this issue, honestly. Just defang the DEA, honestly. You're going to save so much money. You'll have so much more manpower in the police forces in the inner city available for stopping violent crime. You probably won't have a crime epidemic for very long. The gangs will lose power, the police will gain power, and it will help with public relations. One of the big things that keeps people from trusting the police, calling the police, having respect in some of these cities for police, they see the police beating somebody down for nothing more than, oh, well, they had marijuana on them, so we raided this house and, shot their dog or something. That does not help the public's trust in the government or in the police. The easiest way to solve that is to remove the police from situations in which they're going after people that are not involved with something violent or an immediate danger to the public safety. A DUI, something like that. Keep them to their proper role, and they'll be more respected. They'll also be safer. The average lifespan of a beat officer will increase dramatically if they're not having to break down doors to go after somebody whose crime is, oh, I took drugs. It affected just me. Then we have the wall. Trump, of course, his main campaign pitch to the right wing was, we're going to finish the wall on the Mexican border. Fence, wall, whatever the fuck it happens to be. And that's still all up in the air. But he has said, yes, it will be done. It is in active planning. Now, what I think is fundamentally in the past, this ties into the rest of the immigration issue. Ronald Reagan, under the Stimson-Mazzoli days, would have had a perfect immigration reform plan, which, yes, included amnesty for nonviolent illegal aliens. But he never got the final capstone of that, which was the completed border defense system. Had he gotten that, we wouldn't be having this debate, because with a coherent border defense system, we're not talking about, oh, well, drug lords might tunnel under the wall. Okay, yeah, given, that's going to happen. We have perhaps a greater ability now to stop that, but it will happen from time to time. As far as, though, the illegal movement of people into the country, you can solve this by simply, number one, stop throttling legal immigration. That includes, by the way, from European nations. We throttle that too. We make it unduly burdensome. It's a years-long process. It's very expensive. It's very legalistic. We need to simplify it, get rid of the bureaucracy involved. But the border wall is necessary. It does not matter if we're talking about a 100-foot tall cement barrier that looks like something out of Game of Thrones, or if we're talking about more of a topical system like the Israelis use, or even just a double fence. But it has to be completed. There are gaps in our border. They should not exist. I would say the same about the Canadian border. Erect a chain link fence just for show. Is it really going to stop that much? No, it is a psychological issue. It is a statement that we are sovereign. We do have a border there. It is not up for dispute. No foreign state is going to meddle in our affairs. That's what it boils down to. It will stop some illegal immigration. The real thing we need to do, not just with the wall, but everything else, we need to get Mexico to stop people from other countries. Most of the illegals coming across the border are not Mexicans. They're from Central America, parts of South America. If they're Mexican at all, they come from the drug lord-addled Yucatan. They're not coming from Monterrey, largely. They're not coming from the northern reaches of Mexico. Anything much further north than Mexico City, that's not where most of the illegals are coming from. That part of the country, while, fucked up by drug crime, is also more developed. It's more on par with some of the standard areas of the United States. You go to the Yucatan, it's a third world nation. That's the problem. These people are coming from Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador and places like that, or Venezuela and Colombia, places like that. Now, do I give a fuck? At the end of the day, for a lot of them, the answer is no. I just don't care. But we do need to defend our border. If they want to come in legally, so they're getting a medical check, a background check, we know who they are and so forth, that's far superior to the system we have now that obviously does not work. I support the construction of a border wall. I don't really care what form it takes. People who got this weird idea in their head that it's going to be that the Trump wall is going to be a massive impenetrable barrier going 100 feet into the ground, and Mexico is literally going to pony up all the manpower for building it. They've never been right, and I said that months ago. What they're going to get, though, is they will get a border wall. They'll either get Mexican cooperation on building the wall, because a lot of those immigrants are entering Mexico from elsewhere and then crossing. Mexico will get its own, perhaps, border system as well on its southern border. What you're going to get is something like that, or you're going to get Trump slaps a tariff on them temporarily to pay for it. That's what you're going to get. The U.S. taxpayers will front the primary burden. We will get a return on that will equal the cost over time. It'll take time. And it'll also be, if he's forced to do that, the left will try to make it into a scandal. He'll try to explain it. It'll probably fall flat on a lot of the centrists, but that's what will fundamentally happen. I do support the construction of a wall. Number 3 is the EPA stuff, and it's multi-tiered right now. You have first Trump trying to essentially gag them, keep them from talking about anything meaningful. In other words, strip them of their public outreach. Number 2, freezing some of these grants and loans and so forth through the EPA. The latter I'm on board with. The EPA is fundamentally at this point a corrupt order. You look at what they did with the Animas River. We're all sitting here talking about how evil Trump is for the Dakota Access Pipeline. And yet a lot of people don't remember that not that many months ago, the EPA poisoned a significant water supply to a bunch of Native Americans, no less, by accidentally unplugging a highly contaminated gold mine that proceeded to drain into the local river system. So the EPA is worthless. It takes them years to do what should be accomplished in months. They are overpaid. They're burdensomely expensive. Their regulation system makes no sense. And so, yes, they should be muzzled. They should be contained. Should we get rid of the EPA or simply reform it? I don't know. I suppose that's on who you ask. That depends on whose opinion you're getting. In my opinion, it's capable of being reformed. It's also capable of being done away with entirely to return power solely to Congress in order to use other bureaus, the actual federal agents and so forth, to enforce the topical regulations that would exist. And Trump has stated before, and I believe him when he says this, we don't want, dirty water and dirty air. He doesn't want to have to breathe and drink that shit any more than other people. The air is especially a difficult issue for people who are against environmental regulation, for the most part, because even if you're rich, you're still breathing the same air when you go outside. So unless you intend to stay inside with your filtered air all day and never go out into the woods or whatever, or take a walk down the street, or even a limo ride or whatever you're doing, you're breathing the same air as the people around you. So if it's poisoned, you're poisoning yourself too. As far as water, there's only a certain amount of contamination that filtration systems can reasonably deal with as well. We've made leaps and bounds in cleaning up our country. If you want to find pollution, you go to Asia or Africa or Latin America. You don't go anywhere in the United States unless it's a toxic waste dump from past eras. You don't go anywhere in Europe unless it's, basically the same. These areas of the world are very clean compared to everything else. Or, Australia or New Zealand or something. You go to Iceland. Yeah, you can drink that puddle. It's perfectly fine. No, trust me, it's totally healthy. But, I look around, I see lots of trees and clean water and stuff. I've drank water out of ponds and rivers and stuff before. I've never gotten sick from it. Our water's perfectly pristine here. We don't even have any heavy industry anywhere near Vermont, so not exactly a big worry. Maybe some nitrate runoff once in a while, but who gives a fuck? Doesn't really matter. It's still minute quantities. On the EPA, the environmentalism is great, but the EPA is pretty much toothless. And we've seen this before, by the way. Bush administration basically made the EPA nothing more than a running joke that did nothing. For 8 years, it did very, very little in the form of any meaningful regulation. What regulations they pass are little more than burdens on our business capabilities. They are excessive. We go back, if we were to peel back the last 20 years of EPA regulations, we would still be existing under a regulatory system that, while far more stripped down, while far more inexpensive and requiring a lot less EPA agents and power, would fundamentally keep this country clean because it was already clean by then. For most people in the United States, 90s, that's when things started getting nice and clean. 80s, things were clean. It was back in the 70s that they passed a lot of these acts that were actually meaningful. Because we were choked by smog. There were a lot of polluted rivers and lakes and so forth in the country. By the end of the 80s, things had improved drastically. Even people like Reagan never really fiddled with many of those regulatory systems because they actually made sense. Everything we've been adding since then has been overburdensome. It's not necessary. This is the case with a lot of bureaus. It's basically post 9/11, things start really exploding when it comes to the number of bureaus, their power, their budgets, and everything else. We could freeze them, we could decline them back to that pre 9/11 total, freeze them there forever, and we'd be just fine as a nation. Private markets would boom, everything would be pretty damn good. Yeah, we should get rid of the Department of Homeland Security. It shouldn't even need to exist. It's got so much overlap with other agencies. What's the point? NSA, it completely overlaps with the FBI. Why does it even exist? It's unconstitutional anyway in its current form. So yeah, altogether, I support the idea of a wall. We have to wait and see specifically what Trump does in Chicago. There are easier ways, though, I will say, to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. On the EPA, mixed bag. Environmentalism is fine with me, but it has become overburdensome on our businesses and on homeowners, honestly, as well, in many cases. And it should, freezing the EPA's situation, trying to take a good long look at specifically what they need to be doing, how much money they really need, how much power and voice they really need. Yeah, that's okay. And the idea, by the way, that Trump is being a fascist by muzzling the EPA or any other group from rambling all day on political issues, which is what in many cases they are. He has that right, and other presidents have had that right too. It's like Obama when he tried to muzzle findings from the FBI on crime statistics and things like that because he didn't happen to agree with them. He did that too. Don't pretend that Trump invented the idea of doing so. It's just that the media is willing to report on it now because they don't like Trump. They never did that for Obama. They'd mention it in passing on page 2 and then let it be done, then take their own article down half the time, close the comments so people couldn't weigh in. That's essentially what happened. Obama was beyond reproach in everything that he did to many of these groups. CNN now has basically an active war on the President of the United States. Think about that for a moment. And then ask yourself, does this corporation, which is what CNN really is, really care about your best interest? No, they care about the best interest of their stockholders, their pundits, and their CEO. That's who they care about. They don't care about disseminating truth. If Trump lies, yeah, of course he's going to. He's now a politician. They lie. So does the corporate media. They're corporations. I'm the media too. You're the media. You made a YouTube video? Yeah, you're part of the media. You're part of the press. The fact that these corporations have a greater media presence doesn't justify them as being any more important than you or me. That's what people need to keep in mind. The same people that say corporations evil, corporations bad, are now applauding corporations because they happen to be engaged in the activities of the press. I can engage in them too. There's nothing that any of these analytical nerds on TV, these talking heads, can do that any half-assed YouTuber or Facebook admin can, or even the average Twitterer. You can perform the same. All they do is analyze things. They don't actually go out and report live from the battlefield, live from here and there and everywhere else. You can do that too with an iPhone nowadays, if you really want to. You want to go over to Syria and start taking combat footage and do blog write-ups. It's dangerous, but you can do that. Yeah, you can put a little press sticker on a blue combat helmet and go over there and do that if you want to. The military may not cooperate with you, but you can freelance it, I suppose. You might get shot. You can. That's really the world we need to live in. Another thing I'd like to point out real quick here with Trump's FCC pick, or likely FCC pick, I believe it is, his appointee to that specific position. The FCC probably shouldn't exist either, honestly. At least not in its current form. All it does is censor things, clear channel, and so forth. They've been sparring with independent content for years. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Trump chose this specific individual to try to remove a lot of that influence. I think that the net neutrality argument in their minds boils down to trying to stop the FCC from abusing people for free speech. That's because, look at how Trump was elected. People on the fringes, the alternative media and the heavily censored people that get abused by the FCC, they were the ones for Trump. So maybe he'll try to throw a bone their way, reward them by getting the FCC off their back. That'd be great. You'd hear every day on his show, Howard Stern would do the Trump hour and talk about all the great things that Trump has accomplished at that point. because he'd finally be free of their crap, really trying to constantly browbeat him into submission. Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be a better world if the FCC didn't even exist, honestly. But if they're going to exist, they should not be engaged in censorship. They should be engaged in something meaningful. And they don't need the budget that they have any more than the EPA does. That's about all. Peace out.